Were you followed?
What? No, I just came from upstairs. Have you finished packing yet?
Yeah, I got a bag right here. See?
All right. Look, we gotta be quick about this. All right, we're leaving under cover of darkness. If we're fast, we can get this last baby, the last hope for humanity, out from under the nose of Big Brother without them getting wise.
Wait, that's what we're doing tonight? I thought we were escorting the Bodai to stop the drought and overthrow the Protectorate. Are we not doing that now?
No, that's what we're doing next week, all right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Now look, I think if we go south to New Mexico, we can meet up with that Abbey of Leibowitz down there.
Wait, south? No. That's a terrible idea. We'll be eaten alive by that area explosive. We don't want that. It's bad news. So how about instead of south, we go north to New York? I hear the rents are never cheaper anyway.
New York? We can't do New York. The Darkseekers will eat us before we get to New Brooklyn.
No, that's New LA. New LA, that's west.
Oh, right. Okay, well, at the very least, we have to avoid the Olympic Village. I think I saw some telekinetic teenagers throwing down there the other day.
Where aren't there superpowered teenagers these days? Now, what's our road situation gonna be like? Because we don't want to be lit up and have our VA plugged by some war boy from Gastown. Bad news.
That's true. We don't want that, but I think they're okay, because I think I saw them tied up with Skynet over on Route 1, alright? We'll be fine. Now look, we have prepared for every single possible post-apocalyptic situation we've ever seen in a movie, in a TV show, in a book, in a children's theater production, alright? Short of a viral pandemic, we're gonna be fine. Now, let's go before the night falls, and we'll be in New Las Vegas before you can say creatively bankrupt franchise. I haven't learned how to recycle my own urine yet, but I'm working on it.
What's there to work on?
Well, you know, it's effort. It's like a kimchi, you know? You can't just start making a kimchi.
Fermentation.
Yeah, exactly.
Knew we should have watched Snowpiercer.
Hello! Welcome to a very special New Year's episode of Unprotected Text. I'm Jacob.
I'm Matt.
And this time we read the original Omega novel, Children of Men by P.D. James.
For those of you who don't know, P.D. James, who died in 2014 at the age of 94, you do the math, she was by and large a mystery writer. She wrote, she came after the quote-unquote golden age of crime fiction and detective novels, but basically the lion's share of her output was detective fiction. Yeah. Specifically with the character of Adam Daglish.
That was the name.
Daglish.
Daglish.
This is not a mystery, at least not in like the typical formulaic mystery novel or detective fiction. Basically, this is, we have it at the store that we work at. We have it in the sci-fi and fantasy section. And what I found interesting right off the bat in the couple of interviews that I watched of P.D. James
watched the same one, but go ahead.
That she hated, or she didn't like that people would call this science fiction. Insert citation here.
So I had a couple of outings into science fiction, and probably most famously The Children of Men, which was made into a film, Children of Men.
I hate to think of it as science fiction.
When I watched that, I sort of perked up and I was like, P.D. James shitting on sci-fi.
Yeah, she did say in the interview, and we'll play it again. Let's play it again. Why not?
I hate to think of it as science fiction.
I think she's of that vein of early Margaret Atwood and stuff, where they were writing Handmaid's Tale and things like that, where they're like, this isn't science fiction. Don't put me in those plebeian categories. Ursula K. Le Guin had to come out and be like, shut up everyone, I'm going to tell you tell you how it is. The whole genre battle thing is going to have to be its own episode.
Okay.
I have many thoughts. I don't like the distinction, but it is also simultaneously very important.
Okay.
between literature and science fiction. Obviously, it's been.
I mean, I probably would call it science fiction, or I would feel better calling it speculative fiction.
That's appropriate.
But its closest relative is The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
And that I would put in literature more than sci-fi.
We'll get into that later,
Okay.
and maybe a later date.
My thinking behind including this, or doing this book next, is because the novel opens on January the 1st, 2021. Exactly. January the 1st, 2021 is the first diary entry for Theo Farron.
Yes.
And this was published in 1992, so it takes place much further in the future from our perspective now, obviously, like 28 years ago. And it takes place in this futuristic dystopia of Britain, wherein the last birth of a human being was in 1995.
Yes.
So 3 years in advance of when the book was published, last human birth, 1995, there haven't been any babies, basically, for all of that time.
Yeah.
And the world is basically, I mean, it's hinted that it's in shambles and that Britain is probably doing the best out of everybody else. But just the first half basically concerns itself with that society, how they're governing themselves, how people deal with the aging population without anybody new coming along.
Yeah.
Because it's been, 25 years at that point. And then the second half of the novel concerns one of the people that Theo is kind of sort of not in cahoots with, but he had
dealings with.
One of the people that Theo had dealings with in the first part, it ends up that she is pregnant.
Yes.
You find out in the second half of the book, when there's a bit of a time jump by 10-ish months, she's pregnant in like a real way. It's not like she's hysterical or faking it or anything like that. She's really pregnant and is going to give birth soon, and they're on the run from the government because they want to have the baby in secret, beyond the clutches of this dystopian society.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, I got past this question. How much of this future were you just like, a future with no children?
Oh, sign me up. I'm there. I'm all for it. That's really why we were doing this.
Oh yeah,
it's not just that our world finally intersects with the timeline of this world, but also just I really wanted to imagine a no children world.
Yay or nay, book good, book bad?
Oh, thing good.
Thing good? Okay.
Thing not fantastic, but thing good.
Okay. Within like a Game of Thrones where it switches perspectives and you get all these different characters and insights into their minds. It's all through the lens of Theo still. But it does show a developing psychology to it. Like his diaries don't really indicate as much of a strong need to go be this hero.
I wouldn't say he's like a hero, but he's not an anti-hero. He's kind of a bad guy. I think P.D. James was very methodical and thoughtful in construction of this character in the first half, in that he's basically complacent and lethargic and resigned to the situation, and because he's our point of view character, the audience's entry into this dystopian world, that sort of makes us lethargic and complacent. Because I mean, it's not until a little bit later, about almost halfway through, about 40%, that you really start to realize and the injustice of the world really starts to sink in.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I love about it so much. Is it's a great way of world building, without over expositioning everything. I mean, there's definitely some parts where it's a little exposition like, but it always does a good job of coding it in very natural ways of characters would speak or characters would think in the world they exist. Again, like you said, he's resigned. He's kind of just like, this is our fate of humanity. This is what we do. We gotta get up and go to work, I guess. As far as dystopias go, I think it's pretty well realized. It is interesting that she wrote this in '92 because this is a lot more in line with way older school dystopic sci-fi. I mean, I'm talking like 50s, 60s, 70s maybe.
Okay.
Science fiction.
Well, that's really when she started publishing
Yeah.
and writing.
Well, I think
She was sort of a late bloomer in terms of writing. Her first book was published in 1962.
Yeah.
It's not like she was sitting on this for a long time, because basically what she said that brought this about was she read an article somewhere that was like talking about how fertility rates in humans are going down.
Yeah.
And she just thought that that was a story worth telling and a world worth creating with a convincing plot. I mean, if she started publishing in the 60s and was writing a little bit before then that's probably still like the framework and the writerly mindset that she kept with her throughout the whole time, including dystopian novels, even though she never really went that route.
Yeah, this is my one really big point for this episode. That
Okay.
I actually have a little more of a
Shoot
theory.
your shot.
More point to the point of it, because a lot of this book is about the failure of Western medicine, or the failure of Western science.
True.
To a degree. Specifically as science as the new god.
Right, and it's pretty explicit in the first couple of chapters in that that's really the source of a lot of the societal malaise, is that they could never figure it out.
And we're never told why. Because she lived through World War II.
That she did.
Her first husband apparently came back from the war with PTSD and was institutionalized for the rest of his life. So it had an effect on her, and I think a lot of people from that time had similar thoughts. I think a lot of these similar thoughts of science as a god, a god that we created the power to kill ourselves, officially. More recognizably.
I do remember in one interview she says that she very specifically remembers listening on the radio when the broadcast came in that they dropped the atom bomb.
Yeah, obviously and that's a huge moment for humanity as a whole. It affected a lot of writers and a lot of creators, especially in science fiction, for the rest of time. And I have a list here of just some quick references that made me think of Ray Bradbury, C.S. Lewis, Kurt Vonnegut, Gene Roddenberry, Hayao Miyazaki even, I think, comes into this, because his own experience with World War II deeply affected him and his relationship with creation and art and engineering, both being beautiful things and being things that are just being used to kill. This whole book made me think of a Kurt Vonnegut quote, because of course it did.
All right, let's have it. Let's have it out.
Okay. I thought scientists were going to find out exactly how everything worked and then make it work better. I fully expected that by the time I was 21, some scientist, maybe my brother, would have taken a photo of God Almighty and sold it to popular mechanics. Scientific truth was going to make us happy and comfortable. What actually happened when I turned 21 was we dropped scientific truth on Hiroshima.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? And this book has a ton of that language in it. So I think her generational experience leads her to these kind of conclusions of science is a god created by humans that we now have to bow to, and can itself be unknown, but also, it's a religion unto itself.
I see where you're getting that. And again, it is like pretty explicit in the first couple of chapters when there's still a fair bit of exposition. There's really nothing in this book, even though it took place 28 years in the future when it was published. There's really nothing societal or about the world in this book that's like unbelievable. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
It's not like flying cars or floating skyscrapers or anything like that. There's really nothing that's too different from where we are now, basically.
It could really just be 1995.
Yeah. Not that you need like a million fancy gizmos for your sci-fi novel, because in fact that can end up being a drag.
She shows very specifically the issues she wanted to bring up and the world she wanted to bring. Whenever you're creating a sci-fi world, you have to base it not just around the technology, or like, you have to base it more, in my opinion, around the question you're asking of the whole story. And this one, P.D. James simply asked herself, if we change this one thing about humanity, no more babies. How do you deal with that on a spiritual, political, scientific level? And I think a lot of that's really well thought out. Down from like the mechanics of economies.
But she also doesn't like hold your hand.
No, and that's what I love about it.
Because I mean, like, when I was reading it in the first part, I was sort of like, okay, so there's the warden of England who's sort of the dictator, and then he's got his council, and they basically rule. What happened to the king? Like, how did we get from constitutional monarchy to warden?
Right.
And then she does like talk about it a little bit. The king is still there. He's uncrowned, I guess. But I mean,
The corgis are still there.
so
don't worry.
So there is some service to the audience in like helping to like bridge the gap in how we got from X to Y. But it's
Lex
not
to Y, the last man. What? There is one tiny thing that I didn't totally love, and it's at the very end. Spoilers.
Well, of course, yes, yes.
When he kills the warden,
Right.
and then is like, "I'm king now."
Yeah.
You didn't like that either.
I did not. I mean, I didn't think that it made it like a bad book.
No. neither
Okay,
did I.
so since you had your main
Yes, I had my
point
main.
and your main theme talk.
Yeah.
My main theme takeaway is that this is a very religion-heavy book. I thought
That's true. Oh, it is.
without being very explicit. But I mean, it basically, especially the second half, the second half is basically a retelling and a re-parabolization of the nativity story.
Yeah, pretty much.
Did you get that? Miracle pregnancy, on the run, government wants them.
Yeah.
Can't turn anywhere for help.
Yeah.
She gives birth in an improbable place.
Yeah.
It's a guy, it's a boy that she gives birth to. I mean, it's obviously the nativity. It's this journey and this expedition that he goes on for Julian's sake, that really lifts him out of his stupor and turns him from a pretty terrible person into somebody who like actually stands up for something, and he like even recognizes that himself in a very blatant and like on the nose section.
A little on
that
the,
he's like, I need to like stand up for something instead of just like letting life happen to me and just going along with things.
It's a little Neon Genesis Evangelion, the first ending, not the end of Evangelion.
I want to continue existing in this world. My life is worth living here.
For the religion aspect of it and the theology, I mean, not just the parable and the retelling of the story, but also the fact that this small group of the five fishes, they do call themselves
five
that
fishes
in the books. Right?
Yeah. In the movie, I think they just call themselves fishes, but yes, and it's specifically five fishes.
Because it's just five people.
Yeah.
It's not some huge underground uprising, it's just five people. When they have their secret meetings, it's usually in abandoned churches. So that's contrasted with Theo, where he wants to meet up and like have secret meetings. The once or twice that he does it, it's in a museum, like an ancient history archaeological museum.
That's
so
a good point.
He's a humanistic person, and these people are supposed to be identified with the theological belief in a higher power sort of humanity.
That's a good point.
At one point in like the very last chapter, she even uses the phrase nunc dimittis, which is from Compline services, which is used at like the end of the day for the hourly masses of the Catholic order of the day, basically. But the Nunc Dimittis is also the song of Simeon, who was a prophet who saw the Christ child when he was presented in the temple in Jerusalem and recognized the child for being the future Messiah and Savior of humanity. Just to try and tie it back with my main point, I think that where this book succeeds is in the individualistic and moralistic journey of Theo, from terrible person to person who is
activated,
awakened, redeemed.
Shinji, get in the robot.
I don't think P.D. James is like specifically saying the cure for everything is religion.
No.
Or even specifically Christianity.
No, she's not.
Because it just doesn't read that way. I think she's just saying that you need belief in a higher power.
Yes.
Or a higher calling.
Yeah.
Beyond yourself and beyond the government. So that's really what she's getting at here by invoking the nativity story. It's this religiosity bent that basically awakens and gets the plot moving and results in the ultimate conclusion of the character arc. Where it falls flat is how it deals with questions of people living within a society with a dystopian government. That's really where it falls flat, because again, spoilers, when he just shoots his cousin Zan, the Warden of England, it would be like basically if Joseph like shot King Herod. Like, it just didn't really make sense. And also it's like a lazy plot device of, oh, what was really wrong with the society was just one bad dude. When you get rid of him, everything is better.
Everything's going to be totally fine now.
One thing that really bugged me about a difference between the movie and the book, in the book, you learn in Theo's journal entries that he and his ex-wife had a child. And when the kid was like 1 or so, he killed his daughter in an accident. He drove her over.
Wait, an escort to where? Where do we get an escort to?
In the movie, it's a flu that does his son in.
Yes.
And
again, a gender switch.
I really disliked that. I mean, you had a good point when we watched the movie that the whole question of fate and chance and that sort of thing, it sort of ties in better with that, which I guess I see. But on first watch of seeing that change in that background, I thought...
Well, we can play the clip. We can play your exact reaction.
Yes, we can.
Poop.
Along came the flu.
Whoa. I thought that was a studio mandate to change that character's backstory because audiences would not find Clive Owen sympathetic if they thought that his character killed his kid.
That's a good point. I believe that.
Whereas that really fits in with the terribleness of him as a person, because I mean, he's remorseful, but he feels that he's the victim here.
Yeah, no, you're right.
A couple of questions, or I guess issues that I had. All of the backstory and the flashbacks within Theo's journal of his boyhood days with his cousin Zan, who grows up to become the Warden of England. I didn't really think that had any concrete, discernible, reason for being there. You would think that it would sort of help with figuring out how this exact person came to be the one who ended up at the top of the pyramid, or clues us into his character development. Whereas I really think that the handful of scenes with him in the present day as the narrative is happening are more informative of who he is rather than knowing where he came from. There is, of course, the class consideration, and that Theo was of a middle class, whereas Zan was upper class, and because, of course, P.D. James was British, we just had to include class.
Or I have class and you don't.
The most telling part of Theo's interactions with Zan, for me, was when Zan is basically turning down Theo's propositions for the things that he wanted to make better about society. And Zan says, I'm not a tyrant, but I'll do what I must. Which really, I mean, that really turned it for me and made me start to realize just how, messed up the place is. Any boss I've ever had would basically say to me, I'm not a tyrant, but I'll do what I must. So, I mean, it's sort of like that. At that point, it was sort of like a compare and contrast sort of thing. But again, none of the flashbacks and none of the memories of them together as younger kids and teenagers or whatever were really informative. Did you think so?
And first off, now who's dumping on flashbacks, Mr. Because I dumped on the flashbacks in The Monk, and now you're dumping on the flashbacks for the same reason, pretty much.
Well, I just didn't see any. I really didn't see any point.
No, that's fine. I can't really defend him too much. I'm a lesser of a fan of the going too far in the other direction in this instance. Where, because I could see it being Zan, get off. Zan's I want to play King of the Hill. And I'm gonna be King of the Hill all the time.
Another plot point that I sort of didn't. What are you looking at?
I'm admiring my book choices. I'm sorry. Anyway, continue.
They are great. When Theo needs to find transportation and food and water and supplies for Julian and the midwife Miriam, because at one point they get ambushed by hooligans in the woods, and they
Hooligan.
and Luke is killed. And so they basically need to start from scratch in terms of supplies. So Theo goes into like a small village and basically raids a house with an old couple in it.
Yeah.
And he ties them up and takes their stuff in their car.
Yeah.
That goes on for a long time. I want to say it's like 5 or 7 pages, and it could have been just like a page, but it very methodically and like step by step goes through every single little thing of like marching them upstairs, tying them up, like tying the bed sheets and like getting them on the bed, and then he even like unties them and takes them to the bathroom, and then like she shows us like him going through their whole pantry and like everything that he takes and like, but why? That could have been like a page. Did it serve anything?
That's another one I have to agree that
later in the plot, when they're listening to a radio broadcast, that the police are looking for them because eventually people like find the old couple tied up in the house, but him doing that resulted in the old woman's death, and he expresses a lot of remorse for that. And I think that's the scene where he like is basically like shouting at the sky, "If only I stood for something."
It's a little
so
handy.
I mean, it does sort of figure along that way in like fitting within this trajectory. I just thought that it was a little bit drawn out, and I couldn't puzzle out why.
I think she was just really grooving on that scene.
Just to wrap up, I still stand by that this book works better from a individual moralistic standpoint and consideration of how do you take somebody who is morally deficient and make them better. It works better that way than in a political question and like a broader societal how do people collectively make the world that they live in better. For that, it doesn't really work. To me, P.D. James is saying that the answer is believing in something beyond just humanity. I mean, again, I am going to bring up this point. When Julian gets pregnant, it's never explained why. It has nothing to do with they have like some in on the government. It's never like they figured it out just because they're special people. And it has nothing to do with their opposition to the government. It just happens.
Yeah.
Government bad. Holy shit, she's pregnant. They don't have anything to do with each other.
Again, I agree with you. The political aspects are interesting, but they are not really what... They aren't the reason she wrote the book, and that's why I think that they kind of like just linger as world-building aspects and less grand statements about the state of the humanity.
You read into that the disappointment in science and in human progress as coming from her background. So that's where you were getting that from, basically.
Exactly.
Which I can see and agree with, but I did not so much get that specifically. She would, from my standpoint, she was zeroing in on the higher calling aspect and less so the reject human progress aspect.
Yeah, the truth is somewhere in the middle, and I think it's because we're probably projecting a little bit based on our own biases, or as what we're more inclined to read into.
Okay.
I am obviously a big fan of like the golden age of sci-fi, and my own leanings and philosophies about the universe kind of lead me toward more of the scientific or examinations of people, whereas your own religious background leads you to kind of find those more, like, I didn't know what was that thing at the end again?
Nunc Dimittis.
Nunc Dimittis. Boom! Over my head. This is why I think it is worth reading, ultimately, because we can't have these kind of conversations.
It's thoughtful.
It's thoughtful. She's
thoughtful.
It's not.
Well, she's dead.
Well, she's dead.
But her books are thoughtful.
Her books are thoughtful. She can signal to different people and bring together a very diverse collection of thoughts and ideas. And actually, that's why I like science fiction, guys, because you can just ask a very simple question and then just watch it bloom and explode and blossom and plant itself in people's heads and then grow from there. If you're looking for something to read in this, the year of our
2021.
in 2021, You could do a lot worse than checking into Children of Men.
You could do a lot worse.
You could.
No, it's good.
It is good.
It's good. And comment below if you think it counts as sci-fi.
Yeah, we should have like a whole debate.
That's a fight I would actually read the comments for.
If you would like to follow us on
Did we thank them? I don't think. Thank you so much for watching.
I guess we can thank them. Fine. Thank you. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can do so on Instagram at unprotected.texts.
And on Twitter at unprotectedtext.
Yes, and for podcast versions of all of our episodes, including this one, sometime soon.
Yeah. On Libsyn.
On Libsyn. Unprotectedtext.libsyn.com.
It's Libsyn, baby.
Oh, Matt, I got little poppers. Do you want to grab some poppers?
You're hitting me where I live.
Yeah, right? Just get ready to,
Wait, is this it? That was so loud. Stay tuned for our next episode where I slap Jacob with a damages lawsuit.
for tinnitus. Mop.
Until next time!
If you're gonna run from yourself,
At least bring a book.